Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment, for the ASUS Transformerbook T100. Now this is a full Windows 8.1 experience. It is 32-bit, not 64-bit for those of you curious, and it really does everything you could possibly want from a netbook and then some. So ASUS, famous for popularizing netbooks back in 2007, 2008, and really changing the way we looked at mobile computing, arguably before the iPad or tablets really became relevant. The netbook was the new revolution in terms of being able to take a computer-esque capable device with you on the road. Battery life wasn't an issue anymore. Granted, they were very limited in capability. An example of one of the most high-end netbooks of its day is, of course, Sony's update to their PictureBook line, which packed very similar specifications, at least in terms of a 64 gig SSD, as well as an Atom-based processor. Granted, the Bay Trail chip found here, far more power efficient, as well as capable in terms of graphics and overall performance, because you're getting twice the performance here that you did in last gen, or I should say first gen Windows 8 based devices like this. So the Transformer design, obviously all about the ability to take this 10.1 inch tablet and dock it in the keyboard that you see right here. And the keyboard adds quite a bit of benefit, but all of these features, which are really quite exceptional on any device, really are just all that much more enticing by the fact that this device starts at $350 US. So it comes in a 32 and 64 gig capacity. We're looking at the 64 gig version. That's what I've been working with and am delivering a final review on today. And I do recommend going with the 64 gig version. It's only $50 more at the $400 mark. And I say that because after you get this out of the box with Windows 8.1 running, you'll see right now, you really aren't going to be left with a tremendous amount of space. And part of the appeal of this device, in my opinion, is the fact that it really does double as a mobile computer in just about every way, as long as you respect the limitations of the fact that it isn't going to perform the way a traditional Ultrabook or higher-end laptop is going to deliver on just about any function. It still can do, though, just about everything, with the exception of running some games, clearly. But again, just to show you right now, if I were to go ahead and long press on our newly introduced with Windows 8.1, that reintroduced semi-start button, and go to the File Explorer, you're going to see immediately that available operating system space on the hard drive is 35 gigs. Now this is a clean install for review purposes for this demonstration today, so you see exactly what you're going to get out of the 64 gig model out of the box. That's important to know because if you plan on using this for a lot of different things, know right now the 32 gig version is pretty much off limits. Now, clearly the value here is all about the experience. You're getting full Windows 8.1 complemented by a quad-core chip from Intel that's arguably the first one really designed to work with a tablet or mobile environment. Older Atom chips, while they were low-powered and inexpensive, really didn't do anything considerably well. So while ASUS may have started the revolution and Sony polished it up a bit, it still never really ended up taking off the way clearly tablets have now. But this is the opportunity, in my opinion, for that to change. At $350, if you're enticed by the just low price point of the 32 gig, you are getting that keyboard that I just pushed away. No included battery in that like many of the other Transformer products. So if that's what you're expecting, because this does carry the Transformer name, know in advance that isn't part of the experience. But when you look at the sum of the parts here, you are getting a 10.1 inch 1366 by 768 resolution display. So no full 1080p resolution, but it is still IPS, still one of the best that I've seen in its class, and at its price point, I challenge you to find anything remotely close because you simply won't. There are a lot of competitors out there right now that are coming out slowly but surely from Dell, as well as many other manufacturers, but the Dell ones, the venues are compelling, both the 8 and 11. Some higher end specifications there, but also more expensive. And I think for the average user that's looking for a device like this, that really is an inexpensive product, but still delivers on everything else that the competition does, and then some, because remember, you are getting this included bundled dock. And the dock, even though it doesn't have the battery, the keyboard is extraordinarily well redesigned, I will say, from previous generations of transformers. Far more usable. It's not a full-size keyboard, but still tactile. The touchpad also improved upon. Is it perfect? No, but for what you're getting, this is fairly well constructed, all plastic and polycarbonate, as is the tablet itself, but still very good in my opinion. You are getting a USB 3.0 port right there, which I've tested, and it benches perfectly fine, works as expected. Nothing else on the balance of this really other than the actual connection port, but you can see a little bit of branding here because after all, this is what I think the entire Transformer line has always been about. Yes, we've had Android Transformers, which were great, but what made them so cool was that they gave us great battery life and almost replaced a computer. Well, now, at an even lower price point, because of really both a lot of investment on both Intel and Microsoft's part, simply because they are so far behind, there's no question about that. You can sugarcoat as much as you could possibly want, but the reality is that they are playing catch up, and that's why on a device like this you are getting Office for free, and yet on $2,000 laptops, Microsoft, even if it's running Windows 8.1 out of the box, is not going to include those added value pieces of software. So you are getting Office out of the box, which I think is yet another great value at the $350 or $400 mark. But again, to the hardware, display solid, no dead pixels, no backlight bleed, which for me to comment on ASUS, if you want to go back and check previous reviews I've done about all of their Transformer products pretty much, starting with the Prime, the 300, the Infinity, they all do vary in terms of quality control. And this product at launch really did get quite a bit of heat regarding its QC issues, whether it was the keyboard wasn't responding properly, missed touches, a whole variety of different problems. Frankly, this unit has been perfect. So this is a first and hopefully a sign of more things to come from ASUS because they have grown into a larger, more profitable company, especially on the heels or back of their tablet division. So when I say that this Transformer is the maturation of not only the netbook market, but also somewhat of Android, I really do feel that to be true because, again, even though I'm about to review their brand new Android-based Transformer product, it really does still attempt to do most of what this device does. It's just a matter of personal preference. Do you prefer, the Android OS or Windows 8.1? Of course, Windows 8.1 brings you the flexibility of having access. By the way, this is not a button, but merely a logo. The actual physical button on the left side switches you in and out of the Metro UI as opposed to desktop mode. The tablet version of this, not very compelling because, quite frankly, even though there are over 100,000 apps here and a lot of the basics that most people can't live without are now available, the reality is that it still doesn't match up, at least in an application world, when compared to iOS or Android. But of course, the fact that it has Windows 8.1 renders that entire conversation moot because all you have to do is jump to desktop and you have everything you could possibly want. And it does make all mobile tablets, iOS and Android alike, pretty much useless because here there are no limitations. Of course, if you're not a fan of Windows 8.1, you probably shouldn't be watching this video to begin with or even looking into the products. But if you aren't a fan and you're looking into it, it's probably just because the price is so shockingly low. 64 gigs of internal storage, you saw how much is going to be available, roughly half that, so that's important to note. 2 gigs of RAM, I've had absolutely no problem. And that's still pretty much the standard across mobile tablets as well. So there's a reason we're seeing 2 gigs of RAM on board here. In terms of other connectivity, Wi-Fi performance has been exceedingly strong. I'll show you some traditional desktop browsing right now. I could have done this with the keyboard, which of course is more natural. But the fact remains that everything just works well on here. The Wi-Fi performance is strong. These are all things that, unfortunately, ASUS, over the course of their success in this business, hasn't been known for. And with this tablet / computer, because that's really what it is, they've just made leaps and bounds. So whatever happened in those pre-production early review units, they seem to be rectified here, or I just got incredibly lucky on this purchase from Micro Center. But everything works perfectly, and that's where it makes it tough for me to really recommend Android tablets to budget users anymore. You know, it used to be that the Android tablet owned the budget sector. After all, it was the only alternative to Apple's higher end, really just pricier products, not necessarily higher end. And now we've got these Windows machines, this is the first of many to come, that presents whole new price points that are completely non-existent in the Android game, at least from reputable manufacturers, and I will include ASUS as a reputable manufacturer because they do make some great products despite whatever qualms people may have with various products they've put out over the years. They have been also one of the few companies to revolutionize because this simple docking system is what they've become known for. In fact, it's much of their success is owed to this product. And even though this is a stripped down version of the dock, it still really does something that most tablets cannot do without an extra expense. And remember, this is coming free included, and that's a critical thing. Now, the front-facing webcam, that's one of the least impressive features on this. No rear camera here, which is sad. Would I have liked to have seen that? Sure. But it's something we can live without. Again, we have to put everything into perspective. This is an incredibly inexpensive machine. There is nothing else at this price point that offers the same Intel Bay Trail processor. Again, that's the Z3740. It's a quad-core chip, and really it does deliver twice the performance while maintaining battery life, which if general mobile processor manufacturers in the ARM business could continue to keep up, they'd be doing incredibly well. The thing is, Intel didn't make this tremendous leap because of innovation necessarily, but more so because the old Atom dual-core chips that were in the previous gen were just so bad. So for Intel to improve, it didn't take quite the investment in R&D that it has over the years for a lot of the developers building around ARM. That's what I would say. But thankfully, Intel has recognized they need to play catch-up. So whether it's Microsoft including Office for value or Intel giving you the cheapest, least expensive, I should say, entry into a fully functioning computer, albeit a slow one when compared to Ultrabook, Surface Pro 2, the likes, they've really done an incredible job. 1.2 megapixels on that front-facing camera will be serviceable, even though I said it's nothing special, but don't plan to take incredible photos with it. Clearly, it's just there for video conferencing. Stock keyboard here is what you get with Windows 8.1. And again, web browsing, Flash, everything just works. And that's where, for example, someone will say to me, you know, I can't use an Android tablet or an iOS tablet because I want to get on TD Ameritrade. I want to be able to trade stocks. I need Java. I need Flash. You've got it here. So there's really something to be said for the limitations that are completely lifted with a machine like this. Granted, build quality, which I'll be getting to later, is another area that's not suspect. Even though I've mentioned I've had no backlight bleed, no dead pixels, some people will be put off by the plastic overall build and feel. But to me, at the price point, this actually exudes quality, believe it or not. And I'll also be clear on that. It's that, you know, when I look at the back end of this device, which is a high gloss polished plastic, which gives a little bit of a grippy texture. It's not rubberized or anything. This is almost the exact same finish you'll find on last year's Galaxy Note 2 phone from Samsung. In fact, all of their Galaxy products. So for anyone to deem this cheap or inexpensive feeling, well, then they clearly hated Samsung's previous gen phones. Now, granted, Samsung did change that. That includes their Note tablets, by the way, all of their Galaxy tablets for the most part. They have changed that design, but the point I'm making is that a year ago, this would have been looked at as the same quality tier as Samsung's build. But now, in light of the changes, I think ASUS is getting a mildly bad rap. But I really think the fit and finish on this is spot on, especially, again, at this incredibly low price point. Still trying to get accustomed to, even through the course of my use, not using that button as our flip back button, you know, to switch back and forth. Multitasking is a breeze here. Even though we're working with that Atom quad-core chip, that's not where you're going to see performance drop off. So let's talk about where you are. Now, you've got the 2 gigs of RAM. I said Wi-Fi is solid. That should have come across so far in some of my web browsing. I'll show you a little bit of video playback. In terms of graphics performance, those of you wondering about gaming with this, you can. Okay, there's no question about it. It's arguably far more adept at gaming than an Android or iOS-driven device, and that's because even though they've got a ton of apps on both of those platforms, they can't run real PC games, and that's something you can do here. Now, with limitations, that's something that's noteworthy, because you're not going to be able to run the latest and greatest. You're going to be able to do older games. By the way, the speakers on this device are fantastic. They blow away my Duo 13, so a little bit of playback here on video. You can see Wi-Fi working incredibly well, nowhere near my router. Let me see if I can adjust the quality settings on this. If ESPN gives, nope, not giving me the ability to change the feed, the bit rate, but it should kick in. Take volume all the way up. Still doesn't seem to be giving me a higher quality view, but I can assure you HD video looks good on here. In fact, I'll jump over to the YouTube channel, show all of you a little bit of playback from that. And really, that's what's so impressive. Even though this is a lower resolution IPS display, it still really doesn't leave me desiring a whole lot more. You know, if you really have to have more pixels, you need to pay for them. I mean, that's just a fact of life right now. With this device. I'll go ahead, I'm forgetting I got to pull up the keyboard. In fact, you know what? Let's take it over to Internet Explorer in the tablet mode. After all, I've been using tablet mode. But I do want to highlight the fact that you do have that great flexibility of being able to use this constantly as a true computer. And that's one of the things a lot of people forget about this brand new lineup of Bay Trail offerings. And that's going to be one of the key areas that will possibly yield success for Microsoft and Intel now in this new offering. As I'm having problem actually getting access here, seems to be failing me. So here we may have an example of an issue. I'm going to try closing out the tab and opening a new one, if it allows me. Keep in mind, Windows 8.1, and this is far from an excuse, did just recently push, so updates are still flowing. There you go, now things are working as expected. And if I just put in, for example, I'll go for the Galaxy Note, or you know what, why go Galaxy Note? We'll go with what we're looking at here. So if I just go ASUS T100, you're going to see now, I should populate right here, I believe. Did I already pass my video? Basically, I'm going to just show you guys a little bit of HD playback. If any of my videos populated, I may have passed it and missed it already. Here we go. I'll just use this. Latest comparison against the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition, which in my opinion, even though the price difference is, you know, very loud speaker performance, by the way. As I was saying, even though the actual price difference, there is a gap there. The reason that video exists, if, for those of you who haven't watched it, is really because a lot of people do continue to look at mobile-based, mobile OS-based tablets as computer replacements. And this is where, again, Intel and Microsoft are making a really compelling argument. With that said, let me go ahead and get some audio going. And we are in HD. And here we go. And the ASUS Transformabook TF100. Now, both of these tablets are fairly new and close in price. We're looking at $400 for the 64-gigabyte tablet on the left, and the Samsung on the right ranges from $550 to $600. So obviously a considerable premium for the Samsung. Now let's see what buffering is like. That is noteworthy, especially since quad-core processors are driving both of these experiences. They're actually got to mention. And I'm running this, by the way, in 720p. Now that makes sense because that's native to this tablet. You don't really want to go up to 1080p unless you're outputting through the micro HDMI, which is another nicety I'll be getting to in a moment. But you can see no buffering issues, so this is a monster when it comes to those traditional tasks that with tablets over the years we've struggled to accomplish. And the fact that it's now coming in at a price point that puts tablets to shame for the most part, again, if you're going with reputable manufacturers who have the track record and have already got your business based on loyalty and previous experience, this is a really legitimate option in my opinion now, especially if you require the niceties of having that full OS. You know, if you don't want to hit that wall of limitations, that's what the TF100 offers you, or excuse me, T100, in a $350 to $400 price point. In fact, I've already seen the 64 gig on sale as low as $350 to $370. So an incredible value when you consider the fact that you're getting the keyboard, which adds that full 3.0 USB port, so that it really does leverage everything in terms of what a computer traditionally you would expect to do. Now let's talk about graphics, because I know I just showed off some HD video playback. This can also play back AVC HD, full HD content. That's not going to be a problem. So much like an example would be an Android tablet like the Note 10 2014, where I can also play back full HD content from any of my high-end cameras. This is going to be able to do that as well. In fact, you're also going to be able to handle light video editing, Photoshop. Keep in mind, it's not going to be a speedy process. If you're going to try to do any kind of video editing, you're going to look at conversion times or rendering times of a little bit faster than actual real-time rendering. So while it can, legitimately say it can video edit, it's going to do it at a snail's pace. Is it better than anything that's ever been presented in a netbook or Windows-based tablet form? Absolutely. It's also coming at the lowest price point of any tablet from any manufacturer with any operating system. So a lot to be said for that. So it'll be able to handle any video playback you could possibly want. Speaker performance is very solid, best in class in my opinion. Again, blowing away my Duo 13, which is a $2,000 hybrid running Windows 8 Pro around an i7, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 256 SSD. Of course, also Haswell-based, so a completely different beast. And that's just ASUS having a little bit more time in the game to really refine the Transformer and give a product here, put together a product that I think is going to make just about everybody happy, unless you get one of those lemons out of the box, which, don't get me wrong, as much praise as I'm giving this product right now in this review, lemons will be out there. QC, quality control, is not a perfect science, and as best as any company tries, no one gets it completely right. ASUS in the past has had their issues, but as you may have noticed, Wi-Fi here, no issues whatsoever. You may attribute that to the fact that it's all plastic, no metal to interfere. The screen, no dead pixels, as I mentioned earlier multiple times, no backlight bleed. Those are really important things, and things that generally you might expect from ASUS. Everything just works as it should, which I didn't really expect, especially at this price point. It's just a too good to be true situation. In fact, when I first saw this previewed, I said, how are they going to do it? This is, in fact, I really believed that, the quality control was going to be that trade-off. We were going to just get a piece of junk, because how for $350 to $400 could they deliver so much? But I mentioned you also get that added software value, something not included with the big boy machines. And on top of that, at any moment in time, you can always just grab that keyboard dock, which I also want to comment on now, because the actual docking part, not quite as nice an experience as what I've gotten out of the Android equivalents. They perform a little bit better. It does take a little bit more force here. You really have to make sure that it did lock into place. But again, it does exactly what it should. You open it up, it wakes up. You've got that 10 hours of battery life, give or take, plus or minus, depending on your actual usage. And even though it's lower res, I have to reiterate, the screen does a really nice job. Actual touchpad performance is solid. I'm not in love with the physical click and the noise. It's annoying, but the keys are relatively silent, which is another great feature of this keyboard. Not a lot of branding. I like the faux aluminum finish that we have here. Not a fingerprint magnet, unlike the actual high-gloss plastic back, which gets dirty incredibly easy. I'm trying to demonstrate that. Maybe my hands just aren't doing the job in this instance, but generally it does accumulate relatively quickly. But overall, just a really clean design. This is the best of what ASUS has always been good at, which is, changing the way we look at mobile computing. And they did that with Android-based transformers. They're going to be doing it now with the one that I'll be reviewing shortly, the TF701, which looks to be a beast of a machine. But at the end of the day, I still can't really tell someone that a Windows 8.1 machine like this, granted it's, not that fast when compared to Ultrabooks, of course, like the Surface Pro 2, but you've got micro HDMI out, micro USB port for charging, incredibly long charge time. That is one thing I will say that's not in its favor. You're looking at really an overnighter here, 6-7 hours even possibly, depending. But you do get that 10 hours of battery life. You've got your dual mic and headphone jack right there. Micro SD card slot, which is going to let you expand storage up to 64 gigs. Those of you going with the 32 gig model, that may be your pathway, but keep in mind, in terms of actual write speed for applications, you're going to want to deal with what comes inside the tablet, not an external micro SD card. It's good for storage expansion, but not for actual application usage, in my opinion. Everyone will make an argument otherwise, but that's my opinion. And then, of course, that full-size USB port that I've come back to over and over again, because that will allow you to hook up hard drives. You're not going to have the limitations of Android here with, what's the format type. Here, you've got a Windows machine. You can hook up any peripheral you want, a mouse, keyboard, whether we're talking about jump drives, hard drives, game controllers. And with regard to gaming, that's something I touched on and I'm going to come back to right now. This machine with Bay Trail has a graphics chip equivalent or graphics solution equivalent to somewhere right in between what we have with Ivy Bridge and Haswell. So you're looking at something around a 4200 solution. What does that equate to? Well, that means that you're going to be able to play just about every game that is a low power game. Nothing too heavy. You're not going to play Battlefield 4 on here, but will you be able to play Counter-Strike, League? Yeah, a whole variety of games are going to play extraordinarily well on here. You're not going to have frame rate drop issues. But if you're going to try to use it as a gaming machine, certainly the Surface Pro 2, a far more expensive machine at $900 to $1,000 and up, is going to outperform it because it does have Intel's latest 4400 solution. But I have to say, one of the big values of Bay Trail is that graphic solution, because it really does outperform what my expectations were. And the fact that you can really run PC games, again, makes mobile games that are accessible through mobile platforms like iOS and Android look silly. That's not to say they don't have their place, but this again is in another class when it comes to true computing. So ASUS has done pretty much everything right here. Battery life, processor performance, price point, build quality, at least on my version, solid. By the way, no flex or real creaking. I mean, it is a plastic tablet, so if you really try to break it, trust me, you will. But overall, just built really well. In terms of the color, I wish there were some other options, but this is what the Transformer generally looks like. They go for that purple or the gold look. So this isn't a shock. You do have rubber feet at the bottom, which are fine. I didn't have any problem with them at all. Would I have liked to have seen this dock have an extended battery? Of course I would, but I have no doubt that ASUS is saving that for a higher-end Windows 8 convertible like this that's in the works. But when you look at everything that this puts together and the fact that you can even do, true gaming, like I said, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress 2 that I demo on things like the Surface Pro 2, it's not going to run as nicely as it did on the Surface Pro 2 here. It's still going to work great. And a lot of that has to do with the graphics and the processor, that quad-core chip, but also the fact that you do have this IPS display. I mean, it really, even though it's lower res, doesn't sacrifice a whole lot. Viewing angles are very strong, and it is, if I had to put it anyway, as I did in my comparison to the Note 10.1 2014 edition made by Samsung, it looks a little bit washed out. It doesn't have quite as much pop. After all, ASUS has to, keep margins in line, and I still don't know how they did this. I mean, when I think about something like, as I reach here and for the picture book. This originally was a $900 machine, I believe, and it ranged up a lot higher depending on your SSD and configuration. You were dealing with a dual-core Atom chip that we were happy just could play back HD video, 720p, even though the resolution of this screen was actually higher than what's on the Transformer right here. Of course, a much smaller screen. This was a bit of an oddball machine, certainly not for everyone, but one of the smallest fully functioning computers ever made. That's one of the reasons I have it here with the TF100. It kind of shows how far we've come. But a device like this, which did get solid battery life, I want to point out. After all, that was the Atom's real the high point, really. It was the best feature of the Atom processor for Intel. Performance certainly wasn't its strong suit. You know, one USB port, a headphone jack, an actual full-size SD card slot here also, as well as Sony's memory stick slot, another USB port, and then an output jack that would allow for different converters, essentially video out for VGA. I mean, really very limited. It was a lot back then. Incredible, in fact, revolutionary. Of course, not an easy sell at its price point. But then you see something like this where we've got, you know, a 5-point multi-touch capacitive IPS touchscreen, battery life that matches that machine, but the convertible capability of ditching the keyboard. I wish this was backlit, but again, at the price point, how do I make that argument? The keyboard does have all of the possible shortcut keys we could want. I believe this is a 92% match, so you're almost getting the full pitch that you would get from a real keyboard. You got to keep in mind that it is matching up with this 10.1-inch tablet, so the footprint has to match. But again, overall, they've just done everything right here. Clean design, no problems with the volume rocker or that switch, the back and forth, the Windows button here, the start button. And just really like it. For all the people that have had, you know, strong criticism of this machine, I really believe they just got a bad unit. Again, if you're looking for full Windows functionality at the lowest price without sacrificing anything really other than the fact that you are getting a plastic build and you are getting a sub 1080p display, I think everything else here is just a lot to like. Again, performance solid across the board. Really like the T100. I can highly recommend it. Make sure you purchase it from a retailer like Amazon, which I'll be including in my description link, because you do want to make sure that if you do get a dud, you have the ability to return it. I'm not insinuating you will, but that goes without saying for any purchase these days, especially electronics. You want to make sure that you're getting the product that you want. And when it comes to a device like this where quality control is in question, especially because of that price point, make sure you're getting it from someone with a liberal return policy. It's not available everywhere yet. It did launch back on October 18th, but it's slowly making its way, like most Bay Trail-based products, into the market. And I do think this could be a turning point for Microsoft and Intel to really take back some of the tablet market that they completely missed out on by way of Apple and, of course, now the Android follow-up. Again, the tablet side of things I didn't review heavily because there's not a lot to review. You know, 100,000 apps. You've got Facebook just added, Instagram. There aren't a lot of things here that traditional users are going to want. You do get also the included Skype subscription, I believe, for a year, as well as ASUS free cloud storage for a year. So that's another incredible added value. But when it comes to using this as a tablet, the only thing I can really see getting a lot of use out of is this browser, because it just works really well and it's not slow in any way. It just does what it should. But when it comes to the applications that a lot of people like, the fact that they want to be able to do one touch to get their information, that doesn't exist yet really truly in this ecosystem. The good news is that the upside to the developing app store here for the T100 and all other Windows 8.1 based devices like this is that, and by 8.1 I mean full, not RT, you are getting apps built from the ground up, which is not something I can say for Apple or Android in most cases. Unfortunately, there we get a lot of apps that are just being ported and stretched out to fit screen size, so that is an advantage Microsoft has, and that's one of the reasons I think they're eventually going to be very successful in the tablet, especially hybrid market like this device represents. But again, everything runs well. You're not going to find a better tablet experience if you need a full operating system at this price point. The the Asus Transformerbook T100 owns the space right now, in my opinion. Of course, a lot of other offerings out there, wait it out if you're on the fence, but I think if you pick it up right now, especially with holiday return policies coming into effect, this is the season to shop. I think you will not be disappointed with this product. Great battery life plus solid performance ends up delivering a product that's very versatile, flexible, and affordable. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.